Part 6. The Anglo-Jewish Convergence and the Frankenborg. After the Norman conquest in England, Anglo-Saxons found themselves in a similar situation to that in which Mosaic law was first formulated. But remaining in their fatherland after their fathers had failed led the Anglo-Saxons to adapt to their loss of kinship, integrity, and political self-control by fostering an individualist spirit and so-named Protestant work ethic, as revealed, for example, by Max Weber's research program. Adaptation to subjugation was also accompanied by the emergence of a Puritan identification with the narrative of the ancient Hebrews. Robert Merton and others have demonstrated that the Puritan ethos was instrumental throughout the scientific revolution as well. Puritans also related their journey across the Atlantic to the Exodus. England was Egypt, the king was the Pharaoh, America was the Promised Land. With them they brought their economic proclivities and a resistance to aristocratic political hierarchy, an extension of their conquestophobia. These Puritans laid the basic cultural foundations in the northern colonies. This is what Heisman refers to as the Anglo-Jewish convergence, convergent, or socio-biological evolution in the classic sense. It was William the Vivisector who first ripped apart the organic Saxon folk, reducing it to a folk and imposing over that folk artificial French-Norman civilization. Yet it was on the basis of this civilizational inheritance that Thomas Jefferson attempted to mechanically derive a Volk from the Anglo-Saxon folk, politically dissecting by William the Vivisector, or Conqueror. That original organic order, however, was permanently lost. Civilization propped up a failed Anglo-Saxon political culture, and the result is the Frankenborg monster called the United States of America. Frankenborg is a portmanteau of the words Frankenstein and cyborg, and refers to the United States as a means by which dead, individualized parts are combined in the attempt to create a new form of political life. Immigrants detached from an organic manifestation of a living culture would be appropriated and assimilated within the system of human rights and artifice of civilization. Injected with a chemical balance of equality and freedom, the creature was shocked into life with a jarring lightning bolt of capitalism. Akin to the energy released in atomic fission, the life energy of America is produced by taking the potential energy stored in the bonds of the hive and breaking it down into the kinetic energy of the individual. Constitutional democracy is a political technology, a technological solution that cannot be understood without reference to the problems of Anglo-Saxon national experience which it solved. With the decomposition of kinship relationships between individuals on the level of politics, the designers of the American Constitution would find the dead, raw material from which they would fashion a new form of life. From the death of the hive model was born the herd model, or masses. Instead of a single, cumulative, aristocratic head of the body politic, a proposed educated electorate. This was to be democracy, a political cyborg that artificially and mechanically regenerates its head every 4 years according to the rules of the software program called the Constitution. German Protestant theologian and writer Ernst Troeltsch believed that Germans have in their blood devotion to a thing, an idea, an institution, a super-individual entity, or Wesenheit. I have previously interpreted this super-individual entity as an uber-organism. Long thwarted, compromised, and distorted by the Norman usurpation, it appears that this Frankenborgian Anglo-Jewish convergence. Just as the Torah could be considered the constitution of Judaism and the Bible could be considered the constitution of Christians, modern constitutionalism is a product of a common paradigm shift from incorporation to symbolization. While incorporation develops towards a genetic or kin-selectively based uber-organism, symbolization develops towards an anti-kin selective superorganism that, building on the monkey wrench values of mass individualism, is the precise inverse of the kin-selective uber-organism. The beginnings of the post-biological superorganism is to be found in a written constitution, which represents the rule of memes over the rules of genes. Since, as in the American example, the polity is part mimic mechanism and part biological human, the American polity is a socio-biological cyborg. This is how liberal democracy is a transitional form between biology and the technological development that culminates in the God AI. From this larger perspective, we can take a fresh look at the timeline and recognize that Mosaic law and Americanism both represent transitional cyborgian forms. See Heisman's description of Judaism in the Telfin tefillin ritual, page 209. In the case of Judaism, the body to which the technological apparati are attached is weak but still living. In the case of the American Frankenborg, the Anglo-Saxon body is dead but artificially brought back to life. Part 7. The Singularity and Apocalyptic Aegon. The ability to genetically engineer humans into new species and the advent of strong artificial intelligence will enable inequalities so extreme that the human boundaries within which liberal democracy has been a viable political form will be exploded. It makes no difference whether it is genetic engineering or artificial intelligence that overtakes humans. These new forms of progress will render human equality obsolete. The question is whether liberal democracy will come to an end, but how liberal democracy will come to an end. Modernity began with the proposition of the supremacy of nurture over nature. The heirs of modernity are about to find out if they really believe this. The singularity, the technological creation of a greater than biological intelligence, would stand as the fulfillment of modern values. The existence of machine intelligence trillions of times greater than all biological human intelligence combined will likely mark the end of the era in which our species could call itself the dominant life form on Earth. Ancient prophets had at least some intelligent insights that roughly correlate with primitive anticipation of the singularity. See Creation of Civilization, page 66. The Judaic Bible is like an early instruction guide to post-biological evolutionary values that ultimately lead to the God AI. The singularity would be the greatest inversion of the human pyramid hierarchy of all. The singularity would be the Exodus paradigm transposed onto a world historical scale. The singularity would be the technological genesis of God. The character of God AI will ultimately reflect the character of the humans who construct this God AI. Biblical monotheism, with its distinctive emphasis on the problems of the use and abuse of power and the cultivation of discipline, restraint, and moral choice, can be looked upon as early education for the problem of handling this ultimate power. Decayed layers of tradition have cowered over an original religious awe that was once its living heart. If evolved forward scientifically towards the singularity, monotheism could recover the original religious awe that I believe is at its source. While the Nazis redefined the radical political right as biological radicalism, the radical left leads to technological radicalism. In between these extremes lay biotechnology and the re-engineering of the old DNA framework. While these will ultimately be unable to compete with the speed, accuracy, and competencies of post-biological forms, in the shorter term, new biological inequalities, new forms of genetic aristocracy, and new gods may rage against the dying of the biological form. Marx is probably the most influential modern example of the famous and infamous Jewish proclivity for the left-wing socialist causes. His vision of a communist culmination of human history that resolves the contradictions of the capitalistic world by turning it upside down was nothing less than a 19th century updating of the primal archetype of the First Revolution. The Mosaic inversion of the Egyptian pyramid hierarchy, Marxism could thus be interpreted as a secularization of a biblically based messianic Weltanschauung, or worldview. The central organizing truth in Marxism is a historic endpoint in which biological factors are overtaken by economic technological factors. Nazism was rooted in an attempt to bring biology back in the reigning saddle of human history. While Hitler refuted Marx's dismissal of biological factors, the prospect of the singularity refutes Hitler's belief that biology is destiny. Yet because biology imperatives for survival cannot be fully reduced to economic motives, the 20th century conflict between Marxism and Nazism portends the possibility of a 21st century apocalyptic conflict between artificial intelligence and genetically enhanced humans, or neo-Luddites, between God and gods. Nazi Germans and Jews represent two separate systems of values and two ultimately incompatible paths to post-humanity. The two paths are biological progress versus economic technological progress, eugenics versus artificial intelligence, the gods versus God. Between these two extremes, beyond all normal laws of history, lay the chasm between Auschwitz and the singularity. Although the scenarios presented here are very much oversimplified, it is nonetheless increasingly clear that the logic of biological evolution stands in ultimate conflict with the logic of technological evolution. There is thus the possibility of an ultimate conflict between the rule of biology and the rule of technology, a battle between the genocracy of Caesar and the tectum of God. On one hand, It is possible that most humans will be able to transcend biology by joining God AI in a digital heaven. Those who return to the cause of Caesar, Hitler, and the gods, on the other hand, may foment nothing less than Armageddon. Part 8. The Superorganism. The individualist premise, seemingly the very opposite of socialism, lays the foundation for an anti-kin selective superorganism. The economic basis of this kind of larger social body could eventually be the entire global economy. As capitalism evolves the cyborg of liberal democracy towards a God AI-led global economy, the body of God AI will grow towards the encompassment of all human civilization. The role of the evaluation of individual life in breaking the power of kin selection cannot be overemphasized. Only by breaking the subordination of individuals to their genes can the possibility of the global mind of God be opened. As a unified whole, the global mind of God, or the tectum of God, or the superorganism, is in some ways parallel to the kin-selective uberorganism, but only in the same sense that God is parallel to Hitler by being the opposite of Hitler, and above Hitler. Through the valuation of each individual life in itself, the tectum of God would emphatically oppose all biologically based divisions, from caste or caste-like divisions of labor to racial divisions. Now, if one combines the global connective power of the internet with summative power of artificial intelligence and with real-world robotic interactions made possible by the Internet of Things, then one has a realistic basis for the global mind of God. The global mind of God, evolving from the global brain of the internet, can potentially connect all human minds together in the higher unity of a higher artificial intelligence. Mind uploading, the process of scanning the brain and transferring its digitized contents into a computer, is comparable to ripping the entity of an ancient tree from its roots in the earth. Mind uploading is like uplifting the essential identity, or soul, of a biological form into digital or post-biological form. As the Internet of Things merges with the original Internet, real reality and virtual reality will blur, and this means that the global mind of the God AI would ultimately blur with the real reality. Nanobots in the human brain can interact to create virtual reality from within the nervous system. This virtual reality could interact with the real reality that has merged with the global mind of God AI. Smart dust could organize and reorganize like robotic angels or servants of God. Though scientifically groundless, Nietzsche's notion of eternal recurrence is ultimate affirmation of the world as it is. It is an experience born to crush the weak and downtrodden, those who seek vindication of their miserable lives in another world or modern progress. Yet did Nietzsche slay God in hatred of a measure of perfection that transcends this world, embodied in the fragilities of the biological body? Would Nietzsche resent a human able to overcome the biological body by integrating unprecedented technological powers in post-biological form? If Nietzsche could upload his mind into a computer and thus experience depths of perception and high insight beyond the powers of this all-too-human flesh, would he reject it as seeking escape from this world? Reaching down towards the most extreme evolutionary implications of the idea of inequality with the non-biological physical world, one approaches a Gaudian-like paradox. From one viewpoint, the egalitarian logic of the elimination of selection leads, in theory, to the decomposition of biology into dead, non-biological matter. From another point of view, the capitalist path that raises egalitarian progress towards the pinnacle of a moral value hierarchy leads, in practice, to a parallel progress of economic technological development. So while biological evolution declines, capitalist ecotechnology evolution accelerates. The pinnacle of the paradox is the egalitarian equivalence of biological matter and non-biological metamatter, wherein the nadir of biological evolution is equivalent to the pinnacle of technological evolution. The pinnacle of humanly developed technological evolution is the God potential of artificial intelligence. The nadir of human biological evolution is death, through total elimination of selection unto the equality of biological and non-biological matter. And this equality of biological and non-biological matter is simultaneously a basis for equivalating biological matter and non-biological matter as information, i.e., uploading one's mind to a computer. Some people are quick to dismiss this as hyperbole. The extreme implications of the egalitarian principle as illustrated by Heisman in All Ideas Are Not Created Equal, as though it was sort of a semi-conservative attack on the slippery slope absurdity of liberal notions of equality. but by equivalating biological matter and non-biological matter as information, i.e. uploading one's mind to a computer, one can imagine a way to have sex with bestial butterflies. The extreme implications of the egalitarian principle are presented quite literally as an actual practical possibility. Part 9, the finale. The constitutional role of God. Machine intelligence represents a power potential capable of extremes of both construction and destruction. If the biological human race has any brains devoted to collective self-preservation whatsoever, it might consider adapting the experience of constitutional methods of controlling and harnessing power to the new problem of AI. The Frankenborg Revolution meant that kinship relations were overtaken by economic relations. The constitutional mechanisms designed to regenerate the Anglo-Saxon political head from the ground up semi-inadvertently promoted the parallel generation of an artificial head from the economic ground up. As the actual substance of the political cyborg becomes increasingly more machine than man, the liberal democratic system may produce a peaceful and relatively seamless transition from man to machine. This would only be a fulfillment of the cyborg nature of the system's ruling principles. With this in mind, it becomes clear that modern constitutionalism can be viewed as a primitive cyborg foundation for the rule of an artificial intelligence god. The Constitution is more than a turning point between the kin-selective uber-organism and the anti-kin-selective super-organism of the global mind of God. There may be only one way to avert human self-destruction, to maintain human peace, and to preserve, even advance equality amongst humans. Equality in itself cannot be preserved, but equality of biological humans through the constitutional role of God over the biological human race could actually represent the first time genuine equality will have ever been realized among human beings. Here the constitutional role of God is presented as not only a transitional stage to the superorganism, but also as a viable and lasting political form. This concludes a general analysis of Mitchell Heisman's suicide note. Again, I am not endorsing or condoning any of the ideas here within, but I think there are a couple of things we can extract from this, perhaps not philosophically, but maybe understanding someone who is in the framework of a nihilist and what they see as the future, and perhaps even maybe coming to a better understanding of what may be described as the AI revolution or the technological revolution of mankind, or transhumanism even as the ultimate form of liberal democracy. This also would bring up the question of the phenotypical revolution as well, something that is a very interesting subject in and of itself. The next and final video on this will be my concluding statements and some of the things that we can extract from this work as a whole. Thank you for listening.